I'm joined now by Simon Chadwick, Global Professor of Sport. Simon, I know it's very early days with Russia just invading Ukraine officially, but when it comes to sport and global sport, how much do you expect this to play out in that world?
My view is this is not early days because Gazprom signed a sponsorship deal with UEFA back in 2013, and Gazprom is the Russian state-owned gas corporation. Prior to that, in 2006-07, they'd signed a sponsorship deal with Schalke of the German Bundesliga, and it was very clear at that early stage that these were very different sponsorship deals. And what we now know, and through the ramifications of today's and recent days events, we realize that sponsorship deals and relationships with governments and countries potentially can have profound consequences for not just for football, but I think for sport globally. And this can embrace anything from the kind of sponsorships that sports sign with different types of organization, right through to where competitions are held, who sits on committees and boards of governing bodies in sport.
In the long term, what kind of hard decisions do you see coming down the line for these leagues and these sporting organizations who do have really pivotal partnerships with Russian companies?
So we know the late 20th century, early 21st century model of sport was based upon business and commerce, and the kind of question that a sport governing body might ask itself is, are you going to take money from a burger business? And if we look at UEFA had a sponsorship deal with McDonald's, and clearly UEFA will have answered the question, yeah, we're prepared to take money from a burger business. But the world has changed over the last 20 years, and there is a new model of sport emerging where we're seeing countries, and more specifically state entities, investing huge amounts of money. Now we're living in a world where an organization like UEFA has to ask itself, do you take money from a Russian state-owned gas corporation? Now, in this particular case, UEFA has said, yes, we are prepared to do that. But I don't think what UEFA has done, and I don't think what a lot of Western sports organizations have done, is to ask themselves the question, what is the context for this, and what are the consequences of making these decisions? Russia's invasion of Ukraine might be an issue this week. It may be an issue next month. Hopefully, God, that it won't be an issue next year. But I think once this episode has dissipated, then we will see sport reverting back to the norm, which is whoever offers us the most money will take it. And we don't ask questions. And my view is that has to change. This episode shows us that this has to change.
What, in your opinion, does organizations like UEFA, like FIFA, have to do to fall on the right side of history in this Russia-Ukraine situation? And does it have an obligation to do so?
So I think, as we've seen over the last 12 months, is Thomas Bach and the IOC. Thomas Bach saying that the IOC is not a political organization, and yet some of what the IOC and Thomas Bach have done over the last 2 or 3 months, they very clearly are a political organization. And my view is that any sport organization is a political organization, because as soon as you decide to create a set of rules and you decide to create a framework for generating revenues, for engaging in relationships with businesses and countries, you become a political organization. And so therefore it becomes almost unavoidable for you to remain neutral. The same now has fallen at the door of UEFA. Clearly in the case of Russian invasion of Ukraine, we're talking about large numbers of people having already been killed, and maybe there will be more people killed, livelihoods destroyed, infrastructure destroyed. So this is a major issue. And I think what the likes of UEFA have got to be very, very clear about is, what do they stand for in terms of fundamental principles? What do they stand for?
Last question. We have the Paralympics coming up in a few weeks. And then, of course, there are more international events, not only scheduled in Russia, but who are due to have Russian athletes compete. How do you think this geopolitical issue will change the dynamic of these international events where, Ukrainian and Russian athletes will be competing side by side?
I mean, in one sense, just as we're told, love conquers all. Yeah, I would naively like to think that sport conquers all, and in this really fractious world that we live in, is that somehow sport can be something that brings us together and reconciles us, and maybe even contributes to a new peace emerging. But I think that's rather wishful thinking. And I give you one illustration. We have the Poland-Russia World Cup qualifying game to decide who goes to Qatar at the end of this year. First leg due to take place in Moscow on the 24th of March. There's a long history of fractiousness between those two countries, but we also know that back in 2012, during the UEFA Euros, which were held in Poland and Ukraine, that there were street fights involving Polish and Russian fans. And so I think we are going to see these episodes emerge where, in my view, that particular game has to be taken out of Moscow and probably taken out of Warsaw too, and played in a neutral venue.